Hi, I'm Barbara Bruce, and welcome to Get Out, a weekly virtual broadcast where we invite you to grab your friends and family, your car keys, fill up the gas tank, and get out with us somewhere in the White Mountains. And we are out today, and we are truly in God's country. This is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. If you have not been to Greer, Arizona, you need to find your way up here. And today I'm with Keita at the Butterfly Lodge and Museum. Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Well, wonderful to meet you. And we're at the kiosk as we first come into the Butterfly Lodge and Museum. And you need to look because it's off to the left. You just don't keep going, although it's a nice drive. But we're at the kiosk, and what do you have here?
Well, we usually like to post information of our upcoming events so that people, even on the days when we're closed, so they will know when to come here, when to be here for the events, and what time we're open.
That's fantastic. And you're not open all year, are you?
No, we're open in the summer season. This year we're going to be closing on Labor Day weekend. So up till then, come here. And we're open Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m.
This is a great place, and of course, you get to work here. And
I know.
I want everyone to know, in case they notice a little accent from you, that you're from Finland.
I'm from Finland, yes. But it's actually a little similar weather here in Greer because we get a lot of snow, and in the summertime it's gorgeous.
So you're used to this?
Not quite at this level, but it's beautiful here. I love this place.
Exactly, it's the altitude. So everybody needs to know that we hydrate here.
Yes.
We're going to have fun today because we're going to the various areas that are here. Can you name the areas that we'll be trailing today?
Yes, so what we have here in the premises, we have a museum, which is of course the most important place for you to come and visit. Next to the museum, we also have a gift shop, and we operate on donations. So that's where we hope people stop by and also support us so that we can keep the doors of the museum open. We also have this beautiful pavilion up here, and that's it. We can have events here, and people can even rent it out for private events if they have family gatherings or weddings.
And we have a lot of people that come up here for family reunions, but this is the greatest place to escape.
Yes.
So let's go find some butterflies. We're going to talk about that. Keita, I love that we walked up the path, or we could come up the stairs, either way, from the pavilion, and out front is a memory garden. Tell me about this.
Well, this garden here is in memory of two very special people who used to work here as volunteers. We have their names here, Carol Mecca and Louis Martin. And this is also upkept by our volunteers, which is basically the reason we're able to operate here and keep these doors open, is because we have fantastic volunteers here who help us organize the events, and they just keep the museum running.
Well, I can tell you, I would like their names because I want them to come to my house. This is absolutely beautiful.
Yes.
Let's go inside the museum. I'm excited to see what's inside.
All right.
Come on with us. We are inside the museum now, and this is absolutely a beautiful room. As you walk in, of course, you have someone to greet you, a volunteer, of course, which you say are really valuable. And then there is a donation box where people can put in any kind of donation. And I imagine anybody that comes in, they're not told an amount, it's just whatever they wish to give.
Exactly. Yes. So we operate on donations, as I mentioned before, and this is where we give them the choice to choose how much they'd like to support this place.
Well, of course, after they go through the entire museum and the gift shop, which we're going to visit shortly, they can always come back and donate more, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's take a tour of the museum because this room is amazing, and this is where everything originally started, 1913.
Yes.
And anybody that knows the names, and we'll hear more about this from the docents, is Wilbanks and also Butler. Those are names that we know. They are on roads around here, so this is a bit of history as well. Keita, I think we should go to the gift shop because that's where a lot of people like to go because they want souvenirs and, of course, always want something from wherever they go.
Exactly.
Let's go. We are in the gift shop, and this is a fun place. I look around and there are so many unusual things, and that's what we want. And a lot of them are Native American, Zuni, Hopi, different things. But one of the things that happens is that people come in and they want to see the butterflies. And
Yes.
there are no butterflies except
I know.
these butterflies.
I know. So many people come here expecting to find a museum full of butterflies, and what they actually find is this old log cabin that housed two famous artists and which is over 100 years old. But what we do have here is for people who are willing to donate to our museum. We have these butterflies. This is worth $1,000, $500, and $250. So people
Wow.
can give that donation, have them engraved, and then at the pavilion we put them up on the wall so people can have their own little butterflies there.
I love this, and that's a great way to do something in memory of someone or a gift.
Exactly. Yeah,
Say-
a lot of people have put them in memory of their family members, and it's just a nice way to have your own contribution show.
I think it's great. Now in here, I can look all the way to the back. There are shirts, there are different kinds of portraits, there are paintings, a little bit of everything. What's your favorite thing in here?
The hummingbirds.
The hummingbirds, of course. That's
Yeah,
great.
The hummingbirds, they're hand beaded and they are just so colorful and beautiful and such an easy gift for anybody. And
I love walking sticks, and I have seen people walking amidst, and we said, watch out for the snakes and the bears because
Yeah.
they are here.
Yeah, they
so
are here.
you're going to see wildlife. In fact, you saw deer yesterday, I believe,
yes,
right?
yeah, we do get a lot of deer on the property. So sometimes if you're lucky and you time your visit right, you might get to see some really cute guests outside.
That's fantastic. I invite everybody to come into the gift shop because we look for things up here. When you live in a rural area, you don't always have access to everything, or if you buy something, somebody else has already bought it. But if you come to a place like this, you're sure to give a gift that will not be duplicated.
Exactly, and this is kind of like a place for the community as well. If you come to Greer, you'll soon learn that the people here are amazing. Kindness isn't dead here. So this is a place where a lot of the locals also like to come and say hello. So it's a place to gather.
Community, that's what it's all about. Come on, let's go see some more. Of course, I'm stuck in the gift shop because there are so many unique items. And one of the things that I gravitated to were these socks because they're recycled. Tell me about them.
Yeah, so this is a company or like a family-owned company who recycles old used t-shirts and they turn them into beautiful socks.
T-shirts.
Yeah, and the weather here can get a little cold. Even during the summer months, sometimes you might need a pair of socks, so we try to stock up on things that will keep your feet warm.
And it says soulmate socks,
Yes.
mismatched with love.
Exactly, because if you are any younger, like for example for the babies, you have 5 socks instead of a pair. So, you
because they
always
lose one.
They lose them. So then you have, instead of just 1 pair, you get to have 5, and for kids, you have 3.
Oh my
They kind of
goodness.
you can mix and match.
Well, this is
everything.
like doing laundry because somewhere the dryer eats the sock or
I
the
know,
washer. I don't
doesn't
know
it?
which.
Yes.
This is great. All these different colors. They're beautiful. I love them. And of course, behind us, we even have more socks, different kind of socks.
Yeah.
We have night lights. Oh my goodness, so many wonderful things and beautiful words. Be encouraged, blessed, your happy place, thankful. This is a
Yeah.
great place. And a butterfly pillow.
Yes, of
Even
course.
if there aren't butterflies, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. I love it. T-shirts, I know that you have them constantly coming in and out, and they say Greer, and it's one of the things that visitors want to take back to show that they've been to such a nice place at such a high altitude.
Exactly. And we try to make sure that we put stuff here that are made here in the US and, if possible, locally made. We want
Wow.
to support the local artists and artisans and all these crafts that are happening here. That's why we're also having some artist shows up here during some of our events.
And that takes place at the pavilion?
Yes.
That's great. I saw some things that I would love to have. I would be in such trouble here. Cash, credit card, what do you take?
Yeah, everything.
Everything.
Everything. We take
Okay.
cash, credit, and checks. Any donation is always welcome.
Okay, that's fantastic. And of course, this says life without mountains is just flat.
Exactly.
I believe that.
Yes, and you get a little Lone Wolf logo here at the front as well.
Yes, and we'll be talking about Lone Wolf because that was Schultz's son. And of course, the Blackfeet tribe out of Montana. And we'll hear more about that from one of the docents.
Yes.
We are seated on the porch of the gift shop, and I am with Dave, who is vice president of the board. This is run by a board, right?
Yes, yes.
How many people?
8. I think we have about 8.
That's great, and you're all volunteers.
Yes.
How did you get interested in this place?
Well, our family has been coming up to Greer since the early 60s. And probably when I retired in 2015, we started spending our summers up here. And that was when I really started getting more involved with the museum. We were at an event in town and they said the museum needed volunteers. And so I volunteered. And I had the opportunity to learn from some docents who had been here pretty much from the beginning in 1995. And so I just kind of shadowed them, I talked to them, had dinner with them, and just became really interested in this museum. It's really just a really special piece of history in this, in this little mountain town that a lot of people don't know about, and the people that do know about it, most of them when they drive by and see it, they think it's a butterfly museum.
Exactly, and a lot of people do say that. What I read though, when I was looking at some of the history, it said that they thought this was at the mouth of the Colorado River and that there were a plethora of butterflies. In fact, on the door, the original door when they built it, because Blackfeet Indians come from Montana, that they have a word that I hope that you know how to pronounce that means Butterfly Lodge. But it was about the plethora of butterflies back then, not now.
Right. Then it was more when James Schultz leased us from the Forest Service in 1911, all these trees weren't here and it was more open meadows, and there were butterflies everywhere. Arizona has the largest diversity of butterflies of any state in the United States, predominantly because of the proximity to Mexico and Central America. It's a flyway. So when Schultz looked at this beautiful meadow out here, he named it Apunioyas in the Blackfoot tongue, which means Butterfly Lodge. And so that's why it's the Butterfly Lodge Museum.
And I'm glad you pronounced it because I actually went to pronouncenames.com and it took me to a site where phraseologies were able to be pronounced, but not this in particular. But this was built, I believe, in 1913. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it was just one facility, and since then, I think it was 1940, they started adding on.
So it was built in 1913. It was built by John Butler, who was Molly Butler's husband, and Cleve Wiltbank, Molly Butler's brother. And at the time that they built it, it was really a single room that had the fireplace, the big fireplace at one end. And then there's a place you saw where there's a bookshelf, and that bookshelf was originally a doorway that went to a storage shed. That storage shed was then enlarged to make into a bedroom. And so when James Schultz and his wife lived there, it was really the one main room and the bedroom. And then when his health started failing him in the 20s, he signed it over to his son, Lone Wolf. And Lone Wolf added on the art studio at this end, that's building at this end. And then in about the late 40s, early 50s, he added on the bathroom and the kitchen.
And this was originally supposed to be a hunting lodge, is that correct?
It was for hunting and fishing and for him to write, that's right.
Yes, and what a great place to write. And of course, I saw a poem that was written by Nibs, I believe it was, that was published in the Los Angeles Times. And of course, it went with a book that had a nice story about kids in Greer.
Yes, that's right. That's the one story that he wrote that's about Greer and not really about Montana.
Really?
Yes.
That's amazing. One of the things that surprised me, because this was owned by the forest, Schultz was the first person, the first non-resident that was allowed to build.
Right, he was considered the first tourist in the Greer area.
The first tourist, my goodness. And now we have tourists all the time.
Yes.
If you make it up here because it's so beautiful, but so much has been added, you can sit here and, somebody planted all these trees, right?
Well, I don't know. These aspens, you know, they propagate underground through root systems, and we have a bunch. We actually have a little cabin in Greer that was built by Willard Butler, who was a half-brother to John Butler. And every year I have to go in there and remove hundreds of aspens that just come up everywhere. So I suspect these have just propagated naturally, the aspens and the ponderosas.
Oh, it's amazing. And of course, the cabin was built with ponderosa pine and Douglas fir.
And it was milled at a local mill. Yes.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. I wasn't familiar with that local mill. I didn't even know we had that, but there was a time that it was the thing that flourished and kept people employed.
Yep, that's right.
This is great. Well, let's go to another area and take a look-see of what we have up here, because you could spend a whole day here, right?
Right.
I don't want to leave. At the entrance to the museum, Dave, I look here, and of course it's got James Willard Schultz, and he is the gentleman we were talking about that is the first tourist, but it was also his cabin. And then we have his son, Lone Wolf. And tell me the connection with the Native Americans.
So when James Schultz, he grew up in a small town in upstate New York, and the plan for him was to be a career military officer and to go to West Point. So as a preparation for that, his family sent him to this prestigious military academy in Peekskill, New York, the Peekskill Academy. His junior year, he was a little impetuous and a bit of a prankster. So his junior year, during senior graduation, he fired off a cannon that was in a courtyard, a cannon in the courtyard.
Oh my goodness.
And it had the intended purpose of disrupting the graduation, but it also shattered a bunch of windows. Excuse me, and the end result was the Peekskill Academy asked him to not come back for his senior year.
So much for West Point.
Right. So plan B, his mom sent him to St. Louis to learn the hotel business from her brother, who managed a very large hotel there, the Planters Hotel. And what James would do is in the mornings, he would go down to the levees of the Mississippi River, and he would talk to these riverboat captains. And they had riverboats that went up the Mississippi to the Missouri and up the Missouri River to Fort Benton, Montana. And as he talked to these riverboat captains and passengers, they told him about buffalo hunts and about trading with the Indians and Indian raids and all kind of things. And he just became infatuated with that part of the country. And so he mailed his mom a letter. His father had since passed away. He mailed his mom a letter and asked her if she would send $500 so that he could go on a buffalo hunt.
And that was a lot of money back then.
That was in the 1860s or 70s, so it was a huge amount of money. But it was a 2 to 3 month journey to get there. You could only go at certain times of the year. It was dangerous on the river, and you had Indians and other things. So eventually, he said, if you'll send me $500 so that I can go on a buffalo hunt, when I come back, I'll be a good boy and do whatever you want. So she relented and sent him the $500, and 3 years later he was married to a Blackfoot maiden, and a couple of years after that had his first son. So when he arrived there, the Blackfeet, I think, recognized a really adventuresome person, but he was also very open and honest. You know, one of the stories he tells in his book, My Life as an Indian, is he'd been there probably less than a month, and one of the Blackfoot braves he met, Wolverine, came to Schultz and said, hey, there's this girl in this other tribe that I want to marry, but our tribes used to be at war and we killed her brother. So her dad, who is the chief, won't let me marry her. So anyway, he says, in a couple of nights, I'm gonna ride there at night and kidnap her. Do you want to come along? And Schultz said, well, sure. So I think he was a very adventuresome person and he was completely assimilated by the Blackfeet. He spoke all the different Blackfoot tongues fluently and became a real advocate for Indian rights later in his life.
How amazing. And did he become a good boy?
He became a good Blackfoot. It wasn't exactly what his mother, I think, had in mind. But the interesting thing, he was completely assimilated, fluent, had a Blackfoot wife. His son, Lone Wolf, as you can see here, although he was half white and half Blackfoot, identified as a Blackfoot Indian. But when you see a photograph of there, when he's 30 years old, he's wearing his buffalo skin robe. He was described as a classical New Englander. He was fastidious in his dress and had a thing about hats. And so here he is in the wilderness of Montana in this buffalo skin robe, but he's looking a little bit like a dandy.
Well, you know what? I can tell you this is making people more hungry to want to know more about the Butterfly Museum and Lodge. So let's tell them some more, but not everything.
Okay.
I'm back in the museum at the front, and of course I am very lucky to get to talk with Ruth. She is 92 years old and doesn't mind me telling her age. She is one of the docents here, and she has been here since the get-go, right?
Well, 97 I started.
97. Oh
Right.
my goodness, this is great. So actually the museum got started because of a particular person. Can you tell us about that?
Well, Karen Applewhite and her husband Sam Karen and her family had a cabin here in Greer and had been coming since she was a child. And then when the cabin became, well, rumors of it that it was going to be torn down. And so Karen said, we can't let that happen. And so she and Sam, he was an attorney, and they formed Butterfly Lodge Museum as a nonprofit, and began making all the preparations to have the Forest Service give us the building so we could make the museum. And so that's how it started. And there were many people involved in that at that time. And many people were supportive of the museum and of the idea of it becoming a museum. And so that's how it happened. And with many letter writings, we have copies of a lot of that written material that went between the organization that had been formed and the Forest Service, and Karen was responsible. Karen and her husband Sam were responsible for getting it placed on the National Registry of Historic Places.
You know, that's fantastic that that happened, because since Schultz was the first tourist here,
Right.
and non-resident, what was amazing is that he really just leased the land.
That's it.
And so when he passed away, of course, it went to his son, Lone Wolf.
Right.
And then when he was gone, it was going back to the Forest Service.
Well, Naomi was not able to take care of it, for one thing, and then they had no heirs to pass the lease on to, and so it reverted back to the Forest Service. And for many years, it stood here vacant. Sometimes the Forest Service would use it for storage or for housing extra firefighters, because there was a big fire in 1970 right here in Greer. And so there was, you know, and it was just, it's a blessing that it has been preserved.
Absolutely. How wonderful that they did not allow it to go away, because this is a piece of history.
Right.
And how long have you been up here?
Well, I've lived in the area. I moved to Eager, Springerville and Eager in 1970, but my residence is here in Greer since 1996.
So you get to see this beautiful place every day?
I do, except in the wintertime anymore.
And there's a lot of snow, right?
The big snow we had about 5 or 6 years ago, I have to go to the valley to Gilbert in the wintertime.
Absolutely. Well, this is beautiful, and it's wonderful that you're here and able to tell some of the stories. And if people come through, do they stop and talk to you and ask you a lot of questions?
Well, sometimes people, I've had many interesting people this morning. It's been a good morning, and people that have really spent some time in the museum. I feel a little like that I'm not doing my job if somebody just zips through, and they usually make all the rooms, but if they don't stay and ask a couple of questions, but we have gone to the idea. When I first started being a docent, we followed people through the museum and pointed things out to them all the time. But with age creeping up on most of the docents and one thing or another, we've gone to an easier way.
Well, I think that it has to be done, but I can tell you this. Your knowledge of what has gone on here is so important, and I'm glad you're still here.
Well,
thank you so much, Ruth.
Well, thank you for coming, and just give us a good report and bring more people.
You know, it's easy.
We need more people to come and donate. That's the main thing. And enjoy our beautiful gift shop.
Well, I got stuck in the gift shop because I liked all of the things there, but the museum itself, it's full of history. And so, yes, people need to come because we're only giving just a snippet of what is here today.
And you'd be surprised of how many Round Valley people have never been to this museum. And every time I see a new group of people or something, I said, you must go see the museum.
I'm glad you said that because one of the things that I told Kita is that when I was director of the Chamber in Show Low, I worked with the Arizona Office of Tourism, and they say that people in their own area don't visit their things. They will go far off to see things, but right here we have some of the best stuff in the whole state of Arizona.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have walked into the studio, which is absolutely beautiful, light coming in. And I found Donna, who has been here for 4 years as the manager, and she's retiring. So this is going to be an opportunity for everybody to get a little bit more from Donna before she walks out the door. But you will be back, right?
Oh, I live here permanently. I live in Greer. So
Okay, well that pretty much tells us. We were talking about out in the main entryway where there are 37 books that Schultz wrote.
Right.
And then his son, though, as we transition into here, he was an artist. And I talked about the windows, and you were telling me that the windows are long because it was the only place the light really comes in.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about Lone Wolf and his studio.
Lone Wolf learned to paint as a child. He loved to paint with the natural elements of the earth, the flowers and the trees and the grass and all that. He made his colors from there. Lone Wolf was inspired to paint by his grandfather back at the Blackfoot Reservation. He ended up at the Grand Canyon where he would paint and draw pictures in between riding and doing tours on the horseback back in the early 1913 timeframe. Lone Wolf was found or discovered by Thomas Moran, who is known as a very well accomplished artist who was also at the Grand Canyon at the same time. And he encouraged him to go to art school. He went to art school at Los Angeles and also in Chicago, and then decided, this is not for me. Women wear too much war paint. I'm just gonna go home. And his father built the studio for him to have his own studio to paint in. And so throughout the studio, you'll see many types of paintings from just acrylic paints to oil paintings to, he did some copper etchings. And we have all his newspaper articles from his very first shows. He did single shows in New York City. And many of his paintings hang still in the Santa Fe hotels around the country. And many of his paintings were in the president's homes. Like Mrs. Calvin Coolidge was very proud to own one of his paintings.
Wow. Right here in Greer, Arizona,
Right here.
we have all of this history and some very famous people.
Yes.
And of course, they came from money, because you couldn't do the things that they did back then if you did not come from affluence. And obviously education, you know, that was a big thing. But to be able to go to art school, to be discovered, how amazing. So
Pretty
anybody that comes here gets to see all this beautiful artwork.
Yes.
I love it. I know that you're full of history, and I'm sure that you've passed most of this on to Kita, who is the new manager.
Right. She's going to do wonderful things here.
I can tell that. But you know, how wonderful that you gave your 4 years here, and I'm sure
It's a
that
pleasure.
people will call on you again and again.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It's
Donna.
nice to be a part of history.
It is, it is. Thank you. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Texas.
Why did I know that?
I don't know. People come here and ask me all the time, you have an accent. And I'm like, no, I believe you do.
Exactly. I'm the same way, because
Yeah.
they think that I came from Texas, but I'm from Alabama. So
My
you know.
daughter just moved to Alabama.
Well, bless her heart. She'll have to look up my family.
Yes.
Thank you so much for showing us
You're
the
welcome.
studio.
You're welcome.
You know, you may think that you've seen everything here, but I guarantee you haven't. And we're over in the Apple White Pavilion,
Yes.
where you can have family reunions, you can have classes, and we even have something going on behind us. But how did this one get its name?
It comes from Karen Applewhite, who was the founder of the museum. So this is basically a pavilion in honor of her and her family, who contributed so much to the museum.
It is absolutely beautiful. And so we have pretty much given everybody a snippet of what is here. Maybe in some areas we gave them a little more than a snippet, but there's much more to see. So if they want to find out about this, or perhaps rent the pavilion, where will they find out that information?
Well, the best way to do that is to go to our webpage, butterflylodgemuseum.org, and you will find everything about our upcoming events. You will see a little bit introduction about our founders and the people that this museum is all about, and yeah, you can go there and see what's in the future.
And you have a Facebook page.
We have a Facebook page as well.
Okay, this is great. There's a lot of information available, and of course it's a good time of the year to come. And again, tell them when it's open.
So we're open during the summer months until Labor Day weekend this year, and we're open on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m.
And this is where those butterflies that people do the donations for will actually go, right?
Yes, this is where we have them going to be back on the wall over here.
Fantastic. And if you've enjoyed this today, come up to Greer. It's beautiful, and I am telling you right now, you won't be sorry that you made the drive.
And if you don't come here for the history or the beautiful wildlife and the nature, come here for the people, because this place is really a place where kindness isn't dead.
She sounds like the Chamber of Commerce. This is great. And we've enjoyed being with you on Get Out.